You're watching Taste of Victory.
It's that time again to get ready for a tier list. Yes, sir. We have Booster Set 10 coming up next month, so I know a lot of people want to get ready early and start knowing what to plan to build around. So let's go ahead and get started by ranking all the decks. And if you want to get singles while you get ready for this meta, please consider using my affiliate link for TCG Player in the description below, which helps support the channel with a small kickback. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So there is some weird issue with this. For some reason, it just does not accept my Metal Greymon. I'm trying to upload another card to get blue flare representation on here, and it just will not accept it for some reason. I don't understand what is going on with Tier List Maker. So blue flare will be tiered, and I'll show it, but like if you don't see it down here, it's just because it's not accepting it for whatever reason. I'll add it in post. But anyways, let's go ahead and start with the most anticipated deck of this format, which is Crossheart. This is indisputably tier 1, and I would argue possibly the best deck in the entire format, potentially, because this thing just does everything. You are able to just spill out Tamers, and they'll spill out Digimon, they'll draw for you, they'll save your materials. Those Tamers will then be able to use those materials later to play out a Digimon. Your Inheritable will give you Rush, like everything. This deck just does everything. If you try to use its counters like Psychmon, which, to admit, cards like Psychmon are a nuisance to Crossheart, sure, because they do still have to spend resources getting rid of it, but like Crossheart has tools to get rid of that. If you have the chumps like Psychmon, they'll just use Fireball, and if they don't need to use Fireball to delete your guy, they'll just draw 2 off of it. If you have a big stack, something huge like a Dexmon, they'll just Sunrise Buster it, which admittedly is a lot harder to hit something like a Dexmon with it, with 15,000 DP. Usually they'll be removing your Megas, which are like 12,000 DP with Sunrise Buster. But yeah, if you go wide, they have Crimson Blaze. Like, they have potential to tech in anything, and the deck itself, its core cards, already does so much drawing, so much recursion by saving Tamers. Like, this deck is just absolutely insane. Crossford creates a mini loop where you can just keep going for game with, keep swinging to eventually go for game with it. It's just absurd. Like, this is the best deck, but that is only potentially the best deck, because we are going into best of 3, which is different from a lot of the results that we are looking at from JP. So there is still potential, despite how good it is. Despite, in my opinion, it's really consistent because you have all those draws. Best of 3 might still mess it up because you do have weird cards. You know, your deck building is weird for cross mechanic in general, so it has potential to brick. So, you know, maybe something will take it over as best deck, or at least compete on the same level as it. It's potential, but yeah, this is tier 1. I think there are other decks that are able to at least, like, just a notch below give it a run for its money. So there is other stuff that will be in tier 1. This isn't like a tier 0 format by any means, in my opinion, especially with the creativity and best of 3 of North America. I think there'll definitely be stuff to shake up the meta. But we do have, this one is Bhagra Army. So Bhagramon is not even in the game yet. I don't understand why they decided to split up Bhagramon and his support across practically 3 different sets at this point, I think, for some weird reason. Because we don't get him until BT11, if I'm not mistaken, which is being revealed right now in Japan. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, BT11. So that, basically, it doesn't really do much of anything. You don't have such a good payoff for cards that aren't really that powerful and efficient to get to your payoff in the first place. So this archetype, the Bhagra stuff, it's just not good. I'm just going to use you to represent it because I'm not too familiar with the Crossheart anime, because that's when I stopped watching. I only saw like half of Cross Wars because I wasn't really interested in it. So I'm just using you to represent that. But yeah, it doesn't do anything. Maybe some people will cope it and find some crazy key, but like, it doesn't do anything right now. Next up, we got Commandramon. So Commandramon ended up doing a lot more than we ever expected in Booster Set 9, when a lot of people, myself included, wrote it off as nothing more than a rogue deck, if even a rogue deck. I think I put it in Hopes and Dreams section, maybe tier 3. I think I put it in tier 3 in my BT9 tier list. Don't remember off the top of my head, but it ended up doing a lot more. I think it was like a solid tier 2, 1.5 rogue deck. Like, it was definitely a good contender. Not even rogue, you know, it's a solid tier 2 deck, you know, maybe even 1.5 back in BT9, because you could take advantage of Black's great security options while also rushing down your opponent and having like recycling, or rather floating technically, by playing out another Commandramon if you hit the top 3 search off of it. It had good field pressure and security pressure, so I ended up doing a lot into that format where you could interrupt their OTKs with your security. Now a lot of the games getting even slightly faster going against Cross and some of these other decks. You know what? I just realized my Minerva loop also didn't show up for some reason. I don't know what's going on with Tier List Maker. It's being really confusing. For some reason, Minerva loop also didn't show up, but that'll be on the list too, so I'll have to edit all that in post. But anyways, we have Commandramon, I think it's still a tier 3 deck. I think it's still good, definitely better than Bhagra Army stuff, just by the nature of security being able to annoy everything and interrupt the strategies while also rookie rushing you down. After that, we have Dark Knightmon. So Dark Knightmon gets a whole new line, at least like the level 4, level 5 and stuff like that, and Dark Knightmon X in this set. And they're pretty good, you know, you have some new interesting options. You have the Digivolve and then potentially delete something, and you have ability to delete Tamers and restand, but like that's all it is. You're kind of just like constantly just recycling stuff from your sources and then doing like a check on suspend. You know, it's not that impressive without more pressure to back it up. The deck is cool that it's getting new support, and in BT11 I think it gets even better and it's a lot more possible to do stuff with it. But right now I do still think this is just a tier 3 deck that isn't going to be doing much in this format, because like Dark Knightmon X is kind of just a slow payoff for the high climb, and it's like not doing too much impressive on the way up there either. Black's typically a slower color as well, so that doesn't make up for the weaknesses of the deck. You know, the color doesn't make up for its weaknesses, so it all kind of adds up to just not being that good. After that, we got Justimon. Justimon is just ranked here because we did get a new support. I think it's Critical Arm. There is a random new card for whatever reason in the set. I don't know if he shows up later in the Crosswords anime since I only watched half of it. But yeah, it's a funny little OTK deck that just isn't consistent enough and is kind of clunky. It doesn't have the tools really to be super busted just yet. So like this is just okay. It's fine. It's a tier 3 deck. Probably not that good. After that, we have the new Sakuyamon Miko mode that's giving support to like generically yellow stuff. Sakuyamon itself as a deck isn't too great because it's really clunky. It has a lot of combo you want to do without too much ability to get there. You're kind of not doing a lot if you're not able to get up there other than drawing for your pieces really with all the inheritables. Sakuyamon Miko mode is really used more like as a generic extender in security control, like yellow hybrids type stuff. So that took a hit with just Sylphimon going to 1. That's going to be a lot more problematic. So this is like general like security control yellow type of representation here with Miko mode. I think it's still fine just because of the nature of the deck. It's always going to be really good. Interrupting your opponent's security is huge. You're not able to recover as much now, sure, but you have stuff like Venusmon in this set as well, and you have stuff like Miko mode herself being able to play stuff for free, with 5 cost being able to play a Sunrise Buster even for free. It's kind of insane. So like I think just by the nature of security control being such an annoying deck and able to interrupt your strategies, it's always going to be somewhat really good. So I think I'm going to be generous for now and probably put it towards the bottom of 1.5 then. That might be a little too generous, maybe top of tier 2, because like a lot of stuff can kind of just brute force its way through it now, or like just ignore you too. But you do have good tools here, so let's put it somewhere towards the bottom of 1.5. After that, we have Ancient Greymon. I don't think this is a bad deck at all because you're really just ignoring your opponent. Sure, other decks are faster now, but you know, sometimes they're not always going to have the perfect hand, and meanwhile you have a lot of ways to draw. You have ways to cycle for cheap with that Ultras mode. Like this is a deck that's just kind of evergreen because you're just trying to OTK your opponent. Either did you draw or not? You know, sometimes you could draw fast and your opponent doesn't, or if you're both drawing at a similar speed, it's still able to do some stuff. Like a blocker kind of shuts down the strategy if you don't have removal ready, which is unfortunate. But yeah, well, like it's for the most part, it's just going to come out in one turn and win. Either you get it or you don't. So I think this is, and it's a little more consistent of those style of decks than other ones in my opinion. So I'm going to put this in tier 2. Maybe it'll end up towards the bottom of tier 2, but I think it's definitely able to compete way better than anything in tier 3 can. So shout out to Ancient Greymon players that are staying loyal. It's definitely a good deck. I think it goes down a bit now though. Lord Knightmon, so that's cool because this used to be the best deck in the format for a while, and like, was it BT4 when this came out? It's kind of insane to see like how far the game has come since then in terms of power creep. Lord Knightmon is just kind of brickier versions of better decks, you know? There's like decks that do its exact gimmick, which you're about to get to, way better. So Lord Knightmon doesn't really have a place in the meta, I don't think. At best, it'll be a tech option in some other decks, but otherwise, yeah, it's just not that good. It's just like tier 3. After that, we got Jesmon. So Jesmon gets the new starter decks, and those starter decks are insane because Jesmon gets a lot of consistency cards. It gets that option, the one that has Gankumon on the art. It has another Huckmon Searcher. It has more consistency. It gets the Sisters, which again adds more consistencies because one of the Sisters just straight up draws you 2. You have Jesmon GX to help answer opponents' boards and be more aggressive. You know, with piercing, with security attack +1. So like, yeah, Jesmon GX is really nice to have that ability to just go into it, just to have the option to be a little less linear. You have access to, if you wanted to, like a Delicate Plan if security gets too bad, or that Royal Knight card, the 1 cost to let you attack your opponent's unsuspended Digimon, basically being extra removal. Like this deck, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Jesmon is known for being the deck where we realize best of three, or a lot of people realize best of three is a really big different beast from Japan's meta, because like that murdered Jessamon over here. It was just not doing anything in this format, but that's really changed now with the starter deck, because you have so much more consistency, and Jessamon's strategy to flood the board is just absolutely insane. There's worry about Dexmon, yes, because you kind of play straight into Dexmon. But if you are playing it for enough to be free or extremely cheap, Jessamon has already popped off and you're playing from behind, and one little Dexmon might not be enough for this deck with what it can do to answer it. So it is like, it's a looming threat, sure, but I think at best it's an inconvenience to Jessamon that can be played around, because a good opponent will know not to go too hard in playing into Dexmon. You don't really run too many tamers besides your one of, you know, once you get your main memory tamer or whatever you're using for your deck out there, you don't really need to spam more. So if you're being conscious of how much sisters you're spewing out, you shouldn't have to worry about Dexmon too much. You can play around stuff, but you still do have a lot of stuff. You know, you need stuff in trash to play out of trash or hand and all that. You gotta hope to see it. So I think all things considered, it is definitely more consistent, but it is still a combo-centric deck with weird sister mons messing up your ratios and stuff like that. So best of three, you kind of want to keep that in mind. I want to be kind of conservative with my estimate on Jessamon. I'm gonna put it in. Let's put it towards the bottom of 1.0 really, because it can really do a lot. I think we're going to put it towards the bottom of 1.0. After that, we got Bhagra. There was a lot of hype for this in our BT9 format, because it did have a niche of being able to play stuff for free that completely trashes your opponent's sources. It's able to bounce, you know, one of the things Alphamon could not protect against. But unfortunately, it didn't end up doing too much. It's really hard for it to be consistent. You kind of want all your stuff in your security, otherwise you're really slow and you're kind of like hoping your opponent doesn't rush you down in a format where there's so much stuff that can rush you down running away now. And a lot of decks kind of just brute force through your security with the introduction of the cross mechanic. They don't really care as much. So Bhagra's time to shine was kind of past. It was supposed to be in BT9 and we didn't really see too much of it. So it's just not going to do too much more here. This is going to be run-of-the-mill middle tier 3. After that, we got Green Hybrid. So Green Hybrid is just here because it's been performing somewhat in all formats since it's been introduced. It's okay. It doesn't really do too much. Like, it's efficient, but that's all you can really say for it. In a format where other decks could be even more efficient, it's nothing really special. And then we got armors. So we got Magnamon X introduced in BT9, which is a really cool upgrade for armor decks because it really shuts down certain decks, you know, and other ones. And you can just rush down your opponent, but like the problem with armors is you have to draw well, you have to hope not to brick since you're running so many level 4s and level 3s only. You have a lot more DP minusing running around in this format since a lot of cross heart decks will be playing Sunrise Buster. You have Blue Flare that's going to be running around, and Blue Flare is just going to stun all your stuff. Or rush you down and, you know, compete with you. So yeah, it's a tier 2 deck. It's not bad by any means, but it is certainly tier 2 because like it's just a really bad format for it to play into with all the opposing decks that are really good, kind of just like being a real thorn in its side. It's like the worst strategies for armor to be good are good in this format, so that's unfortunate. So let's go ahead and put Blue Flare on the list now because I don't have it on here for whatever reason. This site's being really dumb and refuses to upload it because like Blue Flare is really cool. You take the efficiency of all of Blue's amazing tamers and options, and you take the efficiency of Blue Hybrid and you put it into the cross mechanic, and it's absolutely insane. You get to be more aggressive and you get to be more recursion by saving your stuff in your tamers for later. It's really good because not only do you get to stun your opponent's Digimon still really efficiently with the Metal Greymon, you also get to rush out stuff, and you can tech in any of those floodgates like the Clam, whose name I don't remember right now unfortunately, and Madoki Betamon. So you have a lot of tools, you know, to answer the meta, change your deck list however you need to. You could rush down, like sure, you may be losing value on rushing down a Metal Greymon crossing it on an empty field, but it's rush, man. Just rush it, you know. You can play it out, get your chip in, start being aggro if your opponent isn't being able to play into the game, you know, play into your strategy. That's fine. You could also alternatively just rush them down and beat them and get so far ahead they can't really come back into the game. So Blue Flare has a lot of amazing stuff going for it. I think Blue Flare is going to be tier 1, like just the bottom of tier 1, because it answers a lot of the stuff in the meta pretty well. Like it's a little unfortunate into Crossheart, it's a little unfortunate into Minerva Loop, but like other than that, you know, you're losing to like some of the best decks. Otherwise, you have really good answers to everything else. You have great efficiency and all that, as discussed a second ago. So yeah, I think this is very solid contender's case for the bottom of tier 1, which is still tier 1, still really good. So that is going to be where that goes. And then, you know, while we're putting decks that aren't showing up for whatever reason on the tier list maker annoying site, let's go ahead and tier Minerva Loop now too. I think, yeah, it's Minerva Loop. So Minerva Loop is insane. It's basically Lilith Loop upgraded with this amazing card, this little gremlin with the big sword. You gotta love those kind of designs. It's incredible because a lot of the decks, you know, with the cross mechanic, it basically plays into your main opponent's turn effect, and you can be able to spam blockers. You have stuff like Psychmon to slow down your opponent's deck, to slow down opposing Dexmons. I don't know why they would play it out on this deck specifically, but if you're fearing for that, you know, you have the options of Psychmon. As I mentioned earlier, Psychmon is only kind of like a little bit of a road bump for Cross because you have Fireball, which is really efficient removal for it. You have Sunrise Buster, you know, you have a lot of stuff. You have Dorulumon, I think even, you could probably stack it or something to get rid of it. But the point is they still need to invest into that removal, which does slow down. You know, it's taking away memory that they otherwise would have used to play into beating you that turn. So despite being only kind of annoying to the deck, it's still a speed bump that they don't want to run into. So being able to constantly recycle your Psychmon, being able to constantly recycle blockers, you know, and then be able to draw so much, efficiently use your memory, keep swinging at their security, you know, it's really, really good. To be fair, you kind of are worried about the combo being interrupted, about your loop being interrupted, so you are fearing for security a bit. You have to be really careful, so that's why I really don't want to put this in tier 1, because I think there is a huge learning curve to this deck where we simply just won't see that kind of representation in tournaments because of people running into that and be like, well, this isn't for me, or this isn't good, and stuff like that. So it's an incredibly strong deck, but do I think it'll be doing insane into this format? That's to be seen, and I don't really expect it to, so I'm just going to put it right now at the top of 1.5 because it's kind of amazing. And then after that, we have Greymon X. This is one of the popular decks of last format and BT9. It doesn't really do anything. This just kind of falls to tier 2 in my opinion, because like, what is it doing that the other decks can't? Sure, it has removal, it has Crimson Blaze access. There's a lot of cool stuff that it can do, but like, it's one of the clunkier OTK decks, and the format's sped up even more, so like, whatever. You pop something, it'll go into their Tamers to save for later. It's not a big deal. I think there's just nothing it does that other decks don't do better. After that, we got Galaiman, which is basically a similar story. I would put it at least above Greymon X, because now there's a lot of decks that are going wide. You got Bloomlord, you got Jessamon, to an extent you got Crossheart, you know, so there's a lot of things for it to pop on the field. I just don't think that makes up really for its weird line that isn't too good. It's really kind of clunky, and it's an okay payoff at best. So like, I don't think it's bad by any means, but yeah, it's just kind of whatever. Speaking of Bloomlord, I forgot to add that, so let's go ahead and start tiering that. But anyways, Bloomlord, yeah, this is a really cool deck. It could go really wide, but we're in a format where you could easily answer it. A lot of people, if it becomes a problem for them, are probably going to realize you could just tech in Crimson Blaze. Crossheart can just start Sunrise Bustering the main guy, because your main guy otherwise isn't doing too much pressure because it has so much reliance on the rest of your field. So like, a lot of decks just aren't going to be scared of this. They're going to have answers to it. Your payoff isn't huge until we get Hydramon, is that it? I think it's Hydramon in X3. So like, if you want to get this deck, you know, buy the pieces for sure. Get them while they're out now cheap, because next format is going to be great. But for now, I think this is solidly a very top of tier 2 deck. Like, I think it's good. I think it can compete. I just think the format is not welcoming to it and has a lot of answers to it. After that, we got an old top dog from the previous set. We got Metal Garurumon X, or really just wear Garurumon X, because that's where all your win con is coming in. But anyways, Metal Garurumon X is really great, and I think it's still going to be a solid deck. I think it's probably going to be on the lower end of 1.5, just because the other stuff is fast. Well, I think this is at least going to be like one of the better 1.5 decks for sure. Because, you know, it's just one of those, that's what BT9 was. You kind of just ignore your opponent and you play with yourself until you can OTK. You have so much consistency because of Cool Boy, all your X-Forbs giving you so much draws. You can tech in some removal at least, although in this format I don't think its removal is as efficient. Like for example, Jessamon, the sister mons are at different levels. You have Huckmon, you hard slam search or whatever, and this guy gets rid of the lowest level, so that's almost going to always get rid of something that isn't important and you don't care about. And then even if you can, you know, start answering that, you have so much to remove. If you are able to remove other stuff on the way up, like where Garurumon X's bounce, you're still going to have other stuff that's blocking the main thing you want to remove in this format, between Hydra, between Jessamon, between Cross. So as removal isn't that good, you're kind of just hoping to OTK, you know, you have to ignore your opponent's board and just start swinging. And it's still able to do that very well, you know, like into Crossheart, its security isn't really that threatening because of all the Crossheart pieces you are running, you know, and your only real removal being Sunrise Buster and Dexmon. So you only have a couple cards you have to worry about when swinging into their security, and that's what this thing does. It swings very well, it has jamming anyways. It unsuspends, becomes a blocker at the very least, and a blocker is annoying to a lot of decks in this format if they can't answer it right away. So like, it's still good. It's not the top of tier 1 that it was before because of the new decks introduced, but if you have this deck and you want to take it to the next format, you can absolutely do well with it. I think it's going to be a really great 1.5 deck. After that, we got Grandis Kuagamon. I think this is definitely fallen into tier 2. Before, I know a lot of people disagree with my ranking. I stand by it, but I think, yeah, you can absolutely make the case. Like 1.5 is fine, yeah, for sure. Like you can just generically Digivolve anything into anything because you don't really care about its sources since you're just gonna Digiburst them away anyway. So I think the argument could have absolutely been made for 1.5 in BT9. That's cool with me. I don't really mind. I think in BT10, however, a lot of decks are able to do its job even more efficiently than there already was in BT9. And you don't really care about its ability to suspend and swing and unsuspend over your opponent's Digimon because they're either not going to have something out for you too often, or they're going to just like save all their materials and stuff, come back again and just do it all over again. So I think Grandis just isn't the beast that it used to be. I think this is definitely going to be good, like no doubt. Actually, I'm going to put this above Bloom Lord because like I said, it's one of those decks that just plays into itself. It's still very good, and like you just swing your opponent's security, whatever. I think it's solid. I think it's just very solid. It's just not as consistent as the other OTK decks. I think you could easily, maybe we'll see if this maybe end up being 1.5, but I think 2, considering the power level increase of the set, is very fair to it, especially when it's the top of tier 2. After that, we got Alphamon. This is still a great deck, post or pre-nerf regardless. We don't know when we are getting the Doru Greymon to one hit yet, because it hasn't been announced for English. For some reason, it's still only been announced to JP. I guess that's because it's such a new deck. They don't want people to get scared with the just invested in their secret rare, you know, the Oryuken mode. So that's unfortunate. We don't know the status of what Doru Greymon is going to be, but considering if we do get Doru Greymon at 4 for this entire format, I think this is a tier 1 deck. I think it's probably the bottom of tier 1, but it is still very good, able to compete, kind of does its own thing while answering board. It's amazing. It's such a good deck that has a lot of ways to recover from a bad start and just aggro away in one turn. It's still very amazing. Can answer your opponent's board and stuff, you know? But if it goes to 1, I think it probably goes to the bottom of tier 1. I think at the very least above security control stuff, because it does beat security control. I think it would go somewhere towards the bottom of 1.5. That's what ends up happening, because like you're not able to put as much pressure consistently on your security, and you also lose a lot of protection that would have been really good into this format with Doru Greymon's when Digivolving. So it's a lot easier to answer this thing now, and people will just naturally want to play it less because like we got all these shiny new toys, and why would you want to keep playing this deck that got nerfed? So yeah, I think it goes down to like the bottom-ish of 1.5 because it's still a really strong deck, nerf or not, you know. After that, we got Black War Greymon. So this is a really solid deck to answer all the tamers that are on the field. I think it's bottom of 1.5 or top of tier 2. I think would probably be right around where it goes, because like it's pretty good. We saw Galaiman getting some really good results in BT9 actually. I think it was consistently getting 2 tops in like every major tournament that was in there for like top 16. So like being able to have even more tamers that you're able to remove is pretty solid. The thing is, it's kind of slow. Like this deck is really fast. I mean, Crossheart is really fast. You know, Minerva is really fast, and it doesn't care too much about tamers compared to Crossheart. Once it's done its job, basically. So yeah, Black War Greymon has a niche. I don't know if it's enough for 1.5. I'm going to be on the conservative side and play it safe and put it at the top of tier 2. After that, we got D-Reaper. D-Reaper really surprised people in this format, because like it really surprised people in BT9 because people didn't expect it to be sped up an entire turn by the X antibody option, basically, when you put it underneath the sources. There's a lot of new play cost reduction blockers. So you know how Psychmon blocks D-Reaper's effects? Well, we have a new Solarmon and we have a new Chikurimon in the new starter decks that do the same thing. So that is automatically a huge roadblock for D-Reaper. But the thing is, people need to be running those cards in the first place, you know? They need to draw them in the first place. So they may not always have it. This is still able to potentially do something. Because of that, like, you know, you don't have to be discouraged right away. It's still really good, you know, because you have annoying security minusing with Gatekeeper that can stack potentially, which is huge disruption into a lot of the top tier decks. So like, I think this deck is still very good and could potentially run away with a lot of the format. I'm like, it got some tops here or there. Like, it straight up won events. It won 2 events and it got top 8 in a lot of other events after that, I think, maybe like 2 more. So like, it's hard to tier it. Because like a lot of the decks are able to power through before it sets up, but that's what people were saying before with you know, before with BT9, you know, so I think 1.5, like at the very bottom of it, is going to be pretty fair. After that, we got Ragnarlordmon, so unfortunately, this deck doesn't do anything. Being a level 7 Jawgrass-based deck, as you saw, like, Ordine didn't see much usage in Mastermind decks, so it's kind of the same thing here. It's just really clunky and hard to get all the way up to that. So while the support for it is cool, and it definitely makes it more playable, like, this is definitely a playable deck, do not get that wrong. It just doesn't really do anything. It's too clunky. If you don't see your stuff, you're just sitting there like sitting duck, you know? And all the other decks in the format that are top decks just eat it alive. Like, this is great for your locals. You'll probably still be winning the locals with this. It's nice support, and it's really cool to see that the deck is still remembered. But it just doesn't do anything. Level 7 Jawgrassing is just really awkward, too much to support efficiently, at least with the support they designed in this starter deck. So yeah, that's Ragnarlordmon. It's just tier 3. Not terrible, you know, it's playable, but that's where it'll end up being. Then we got Mastermind. Mastermind is pretty solid. I'm going to put this like towards the top of tier 2, still really good. It's not bad at all. It's a really good deck that is able to answer stuff because, actually, I think that we might have to put this at the bottom of 1.5, honestly, because like Chaos Degradation like easily answers everything. It's super annoying security. You're able to stop them from swinging certain decks with your, I think it's the Angelwoman you play. You give a security attack -2. Gatsomon helps you efficiently climb up. You got your searchers, being able to get a pretty decently wide board if you're not able to answer it. You know, if they're not blue flare and able to stun you and all that stuff, it's pretty good answers into the meta. That's a pretty nice spot for it. I might even be underestimating it at 1.5, but we'll see how that ends up going, because like you definitely have a lot more leeway now, but it's still like one of those clunky Jawgrass based decks, so we'll see. And after that, we got Imperial Dramon. So I think this kind of suffers the same fate as Ancient Greymon, where it's kind of just like an evergreen deck. Like, I don't think this is bad. It's just like, it's just run of the mill. I'd probably at least put this over Armors, because it's not susceptible. Its main play is not as susceptible to all the removal in this format. You're kind of just doing your own thing, swinging at security as well, bottom decking your opponent's stuff, you know? So like, it's good. It's a tier 2 deck that's able to compete pretty fast. That's all it is. I think this might be even underselling it, but these guys are like really good up here. So like, I don't want this to go as like, oh, this is just the middle of tier 2. This is like the upper echelon of tier 2. But yeah, that's it. It's fine, you know, able to OTK. Other decks are able to OTK faster, more consistently, so it's fine. Like, if you're good with a deck, if you're familiar with it, you're still able to do well with it. But anyways, that is going to be the tier list, guys, and I'm sorry it was a little awkward with the tier list maker site just not working with me. I do not understand why it refused to accept Metal Greymon and Minervamon arts, so that is what it is. Hopefully, right now in post, you're able to see them on the screen. So that is going to be the list, you know? I think it's going to be a really interesting format. I'm excited to see how North America shakes it up, because there's always a lot of doom and gloom when we get these kind of sets in North America, but like, we end up shaking up the meta a lot, and it ends up being decently different enough from JP with one deck, like, or two decks showing up that had no representation over there, doing really well over here. So I'm really excited to see how North America will shake things up and if it'll be really different or not, despite the fact that I don't like Cross Wars. Never even finished the anime, so I'm not excited from a Digimon standpoint for this set. But I am excited from a player-based standpoint and to see if there's any innovation in it. So let me know what you guys thought and if you would change anything about the tier list. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.